you enjoy most at Christmas? Maybe it's some of these old carols that we sing every year that just bring back memories of times past. Maybe there are other things that you really enjoy. Here's some thoughts. What do people enjoy most about Christmas? Spending time with the family. That's not one of the pictures, but we'll come to that in a moment. Anything else that... Food, yes. Food, I like the food. You just need to be careful how much you eat and how much you drink. Oops, it's already blown. Yeah, decorations. We go in for kind of fairly muted decorations here. We have a little competition every year, looking around the local area, like which is the house with the most hideous lights. And it's in Rannoch Drive. Yeah, so if you go down Rannoch Drive this Christmas, you will see it, that house. Gifts. Who likes gifts? Yeah, a few hands going up. Any of the kids got their gifts with them to display? We've had Sam with his guitar. We've got Luke with his soldier's outfit there. I don't think anybody's wanting to come out, but anybody else got gifts with them this morning? Yeah. What have you got? Swimming goggles and a book about unicorns. Fantastic. I wonder if I'll get swimming goggles or a book about unicorns. Oh, that's exciting. Being an Aberdonian, I have to say, I'm from the Scrooge school of celebrating Christmas, so gifts isn't the biggest thing for me, but I know the children really enjoy that part of Christmas. But to move forward to what Jamie mentioned, the next slide has a little message there. The greatest gift of all, and I say that advisedly, is to spend Christmas with those you love. Not that that's a bad thing, but we'll come to the better thing in a moment. Yeah, that's really the most important thing to me about Christmas Day, is spending time with those that I love and those that love me. And that really is a wonderful blessing, and I'm sure that all of us here are going to spend the rest of our day doing just that. Sadly, of course, there are homes in our communities. There are streets in our city. There are cities in our world where love is in short supply. And that's a little sad, because actually what I'm wanting to share is that actually love is right at the very heart of Christmas. I'm going to take you back in time for a moment to the year 1914. Christmas. Different place, different time, but nevertheless a time when love was in extremely short supply. Christmas 1914, the First World War had just begun, but there was a stalemate. They dug into their trenches. I suppose you could say they were entrenched. And the generals were surprised. I think on both sides they thought, well, there would be a quick end to the war. But that's not quite what happened. So by Christmas that year, they were entrenched and nothing was happening. The video.
Oakley. No. Ein Britter kommt! Ein Britter kommt!
Jim?
Jim, don't do it!
Halt! Er ist nicht bewaffnet!
Nein, Otto!
Jim!
My name is Jim.
Mein Name ist Otto.
Pleased to meet you, Otto.
Freut mich.
Rose, she's called.
Die ist schön. Schön. Danke.
Happy Christmas.
Frohe Weihnachten.
Well, grateful thanks to Sainsbury's for producing that advert. There's a poignancy about that. Christmas Day, these informal truces that happened in 1914. The generals, of course, heard about all this and they banned them, prohibited them in the future years. But for that day, possibly Boxing Day as well, these informal truces occurred. And the men from the two sides came together, greeted each other, played football, shared gifts, and sang carols, Silent Night, like us today. But of course, it didn't last. Just a little bit before Christmas, I went to the high school down at Annesland to do a little Christmas message, and I shared that video. But as I was preparing to go into the assembly hall, they have these big plaques, two big plaques, on the way in of the names of former pupils who lost their lives in the First World War and the Second World War. And I couldn't believe the numbers, so I had to ask the deputy rector, do you know how many men lost their lives from this school? And he said, well, the First World War, he thinks it was about 500. It was a huge list. And that was about the same number of children as were there at the service that day. And so although love broke in for that one brief moment, sadly the love disappeared very quickly thereafter from that situation. Do we see love in our world today in 2019? Or has love deserted us? We might have wondered over all the political discussions, I don't like to mention these, in the days leading up to December the 12th. I don't know if you watched any question times. There was quite a number of them. One I saw, I just thought it's all so negative. People were just really harsh. They were critical. They were trying to knock people down and not build them up. And there was one moment when Fiona Bruce, who leads question time, just stopped and said, well, why is everybody so angry about everything all the time? And one of the politicians, who in fact I don't think is an MP now, but was, I think, did stand to be the Prime Minister just a few weeks ago, said, well, name's Rory Stewart in case you're wondering, well, I believe it's because as a nation we've lost sight of one little word, love. It was probably, I didn't watch the whole program, it was probably the most sensible thing said that entire evening. And if you read the Bible, which I'm sure you do, and you can go right back to the beginning and right through to the end, and love is a significant feature of the Bible. It's there back in the Torah, which summarizes the law, and Jesus reminded us of this, that it's all about loving God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and loving your neighbor as yourself. If you read the Psalms, of which there's 150, one of the most common phrases used in there by the different writers is the unfailing love of God. Now you get into the New Testament, and it's something that Jesus focused in on again and again. He spoke about God's love for us in the parable of the prodigal son and the father who embraced his son when he returned home. He spoke about it in the Good Samaritan, reminded us of what it means to love your neighbor. And loving your neighbor, it means loving everyone, even those you might consider enemies. And just in that lead up to his death on the cross, the Last Supper in John's Gospel, which we read, he said, "Greater love has no one than this, that they lay down their life for their friends," which is what he did. Now, one of the high points in terms of the Bible's teaching on love is there on the screen from 1 Corinthians 13. You maybe hear it most often at weddings. It's a good message for a wedding. Of course, it's originally spoken or written to a church. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love does not envy. Love does not boast. Love is not proud. Love is not rude. Love is not selfish. Love is not easily angered. Love keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil. Love rejoices in the truth. Love always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. And if each one of us and every person in our world could do just that in those few verses, our world would be a very different place. And yet we struggle so much. One thing we do know is just how much love is brought into our world with the birth of a child. We've had that blessing this year. Hate to remind you, with the birth of 2 grandchildren, little Eliana in January and Ava in March. And we're going to be spending some of today with them. And how much love a new baby brings into our world. And that, of course, in a sense, is the absolute key and truth at Christmas time. This was brought back to me at Lomos Prison. Last Wednesday, we had the carol service there. And one of the men, who doesn't connect with much else, had offered to sing. And he'd sung the year before at the carol service, so we knew he was a good singer. He'd had some opera training at some point in his past. And he came on the Monday, a couple of days earlier, to prison fellowship. Didn't usually come in the evening because the person who was leading the band on Wednesday was there with his guitar, and he wanted to practice, so he practiced his song. The message, of course, was all about Christmas. There was a video about the nativity story, and at the end, the man leading from the team from Prison Fellowship said, well, just think about that, focus on that, and consider, is this message of Christmas and the coming of Jesus the most important thing in your life? Well, the man who'd come to practice the song, his name is Cameron, he came up to me at the end and he said, John, can I have a Bible? So I thought, well, don't know what that's about, but I gave him a Bible. We've got lots of Bibles to hand out in the chaplaincy. And he took it away. And what he explained before he sang on Wednesday at the carol service was, that question really gripped me, he said. And I took the Bible and I went away and I read the nativity story in Matthew and Luke over and over again. And I just had this revelation that this story is true. And right at the heart of this story is the message of love. And he shared this at the carol service. There was over 100 people there, prisoners, families, their children, volunteers, officers. And everybody heard him share that revelation that he had had for the very first time that week. The heart of the Christmas is love. And that love is found in the baby Jesus. It was shared by John in one of his letters. John, of course, you remember, was the disciple whom Jesus loved. And it seemed like John had a particular understanding of the love of God found in his friend Jesus. And he wrote this: "This is how God showed his love among us. He sent his one and only Son into the world that we might live through him." Christmas is all about love. It's all about Jesus. And actually, the two things are there together in the story of Christmas. So let's not forget that as we celebrate with each other, our families, our friends today. Let's take that out into the world with us as we